Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 2,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
The Minnesota Vikings just dropped two absolute bombshells that have the entire NFL world buzzing, and if you're not paying attention right now, you're missing out on what could be the most underrated roster transformation of the entire offseason. While everyone else is obsessing over quarterback drama and wide receiver trades, the Vikings are quietly assembling something we've never seen before in the modern NFL era, and it's happening right under everyone's noses. We're talking about moves that could completely change the trajectory of Minnesota's 2026 season before a single snap is even played. The front office isn't just making moves, they're making statements. They're telling the rest of the league that every single phase of this game matters, and they're willing to go after proven champions to make it happen. This isn't your typical offseason shuffle, where teams sign bargain bin veterans and hope for the best. This is calculated, aggressive roster building at its finest. And it's exactly what Vikings fans have been begging for. So what exactly went down? The Vikings have officially agreed to terms with punter Johnny Hekker on a one-year deal, and they've also thrown down the gauntlet by signing Buffalo Bills restricted free agent tackle Ryan Vandemark to an offer sheet. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. A punter? Really? That's what we're getting excited about? But stick with me here, because when you understand the full picture of what Minnesota is building, you'll realize this is absolutely genius-level roster construction. Let's start with the Johnny Hekker signing, because this move is about so much more than just replacing Ryan Wright, who bolted for New Orleans during free agency. What the Vikings have done is create something truly special, something that might sound ridiculous but is absolutely real. They now have an all-pro at every single special teams position. Think about that for a second. Andrew DePaula, the two-time all-pro long snapper, is already on the roster. Will Reichard, who was a first-team all-pro kicker just last season, is locked in, and now they're adding Johnny Hekker, a guy who was an all-pro punter during his absolute prime with the Los Angeles Rams. This isn't just a special teams unit anymore. This is a special teams dynasty in the making. And in a league where games are routinely decided by a single possession, having elite talent at every special teams position could be the difference between watching the playoffs from home and hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. The Vikings understand something that a lot of organizations overlook. Special teams isn't just a third of the game, it's often the deciding third of the game. But let's talk about Johnny Hekker specifically, because his resume is absolutely insane. Over the last 15 years, this man has been widely considered one of the best punters in the entire National Football League. When you think about punters who can completely flip a game with a single boot, Hecker's name is at the top of that list. During his heyday with the Rams, he wasn't just punting the ball, he was weaponizing field position in ways that would make opposing coaches absolutely lose their minds. Now, full transparency here. Hecker's most recent season with the Tennessee Titans wasn't quite at that same elite level we saw during his Rams years. He's not the same guy who was terrorizing the league year after year. But here's the thing, even a slightly diminished Johnny Hekker is still better than the vast majority of punters in this league. His leg strength is still massive, his accuracy is still deadly, and he brings something to the table that goes beyond just pure punting ability. This dude can actually throw the football. I'm not kidding. Johnny Hekker has thrown the ball 26 times in his NFL career, completing over 57% of those passes. He's thrown one touchdown and only one interception. For Vikings special teams coordinator Matt Daniels, who loves to get creative with his play calling, this opens up a whole new dimension of possibilities. You want to run fake punts? You want to catch defenses sleeping? Johnny Hekker might just be your guy. Looking at some of his highlight reels, Hekker can legitimately hit those 15-yard out routes when the Gunners are running comebacks or outs. He's not just some punter who can throw a wobbly duck down the field and hope for the best. This guy has touch, accuracy, and the football IQ to execute in pressure situations. If Matt Daniels wants to cook up some special teams wizardry this season, he's got the perfect weapon to do it. And here's something Vikings fans were genuinely concerned about. When Ryan Wright left for New Orleans, Who was going to hold for Will Reichard? You can't just throw any random punter out there to hold for an all-pro kicker and expect everything to work perfectly. The holder position requires precision, consistency, and experience. Well, guess what? If there was an all-pro position for holding, Johnny Hekker would have won it multiple times. This guy is elite at holding field goals and extra points. The Vikings didn't just find a replacement for Wright, they found an upgrade. Here's a fun connection that makes this signing even more interesting. Johnny Hekker and Vikings special teams coordinator Matt Daniels were actually teammates back with the Rams in 2012 and 2013. Daniels was a running back for Los Angeles during those years, and now he's going to be Hekker's special teams coach in Minnesota. That's not just a random coincidence. That's a relationship built on years of mutual respect and understanding of how each other operates. And the connections don't stop there. Hekker also has ties to Vikings offensive coordinator Kevin O'Connell from their time together with the Rams, when O'Connell was the offensive coordinator and the team won the Super Bowl. Hekker was the punter during that championship run. So when you add it all up, you've got a veteran punter who already has established relationships with key members of the Vikings coaching staff. He's not walking into a completely unfamiliar situation. He knows these guys, he knows how they think, and he knows what they expect. The bottom line with the Hekker signing is simple. The Vikings needed a punter. They needed a holder for their all-pro kicker. They needed someone who could flip field position and potentially execute trick plays. And they got all of that in a one-year deal with a guy who has multiple all-pro selections on his resume. That's not just checking a box. That's maximizing value and building a complete roster from top to bottom. But as exciting as the Hekker signing is, the move that has everyone really talking is the Vikings signing Buffalo Bills restricted free agent Ryan Vandemark to an offer sheet. This is where things get really interesting, because this isn't a done deal yet. For those who don't know how restricted free agency works, here's the quick breakdown. The Vikings have extended an offer sheet to Vandemark, and now the Buffalo Bills have 5 days to match that offer. If they match it, Vandemark goes back to Buffalo, and the Vikings walk away empty-handed. But if the Bills don't match, Vandemark becomes a Minnesota Viking. Now, the contract details haven't been officially released yet, but the speculation is that it's probably somewhere in the $3 to $4 million per year range. That's not massive money for an offensive tackle, which tells you that the Vikings are being smart about this. They're not overpaying to force Buffalo's hand. They're offering fair market value for a quality swing tackle and seeing if the Bills are willing to match. So, who exactly is Ryan Vandemark? And why should Vikings fans be excited about this potential addition? Let me break it down for you. Vandemark has been a solid swing tackle for the Buffalo Bills over the last couple of years. He's not a household name, and he's not going to make any Pro Bowls, but he's a reliable, high-quality backup who can step in when needed and not completely destroy your offensive line. And in today's NFL, that's incredibly valuable. First, let's talk about the physical profile. Ryan Vandemark is an absolute unit. This guy stands 6 feet 7 inches tall and weighs 307 pounds. When you see him in person, he looks like a human building. He's got the size to match up with the biggest defensive ends and edge rushers in the league, and he's got the athleticism to handle speed rushers as well. But size alone doesn't make you a good offensive tackle. You need production to back it up, and Vandemark has that in spades. According to Pro Football Focus, Vandemark had an overall grade of 74.4 this past season, which ranked 25th in the entire National Football League among all offensive tackles. That's not just solid, that's legitimately good. He graded out well in pass blocking, but where he really shines is in the run blocking department. He posted a run blocking grade of 74.9, which was 22nd in the league. For a team like the Vikings, who want to establish the run game and control the line of scrimmage, that's exactly the kind of player you want backing up your starters. Vandemark played 312 snaps this past season, filling in for the Bills whenever they needed backup offensive linemen to step up. And here's the key thing. He didn't just survive when he was on the field. He actually played well. That's the difference between a guy who's just a warm body and a guy who's a legitimate swing tackle you can trust. Now let's talk about why the Vikings are so interested in adding a swing tackle in the first place. The Vikings' offensive line situation is pretty clear heading into the 2026 season. They're assuming Blake Brandel is going to be the center, unless they draft someone, which seems very likely either in the late second day or early third day of the NFL draft. At offensive guard, they're set with Will Fries and Donovan Jackson. The Vikings gave Fries $88 million, and they spent a first-round pick on Donovan Jackson, so those guys aren't going anywhere. The tackle positions are where things get interesting. Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill are both excellent starting tackles. They're legitimate bookend guys who can anchor the offensive line and give quarterback Sam Darnold time to operate. But here's the problem. Both Darrisaw and O'Neill have dealt with injuries over the last couple of years. Darrisaw's availability was constantly in question last season. You never knew week to week if he was going to be able to suit up. O'Neill has had his injury issues as well. When your starting tackles are dealing with injury concerns, having a high-end swing tackle becomes an absolute necessity. You can't just plug in some sixth-round rookie or a practice squad player and expect to maintain the same level of offensive line play. You need someone who can step in immediately and perform at a high level. That's what Ryan Van Demark would bring to Minnesota. Now, here's the reality check. The Buffalo Bills are almost certainly going to match this offer sheet. They have no interest in letting Van Demark walk out the door. The Bills understand they're trying to go on a Super Bowl run with Josh Allen at quarterback, and they've dealt with their own offensive tackle injuries over the last couple of seasons. Having a reliable swing tackle like Van Demark is crucial to their championship aspirations. So, depending on how much money the Vikings threw at him in this offer sheet, the Bills will probably match and keep him in Buffalo. But if they don't match, if the Bills decide the price is too high or they have other plans, then the Vikings just landed themselves one hell of a swing tackle. And even if Van Demark ends up back with Buffalo, the Vikings sending this message that they're actively looking to upgrade the swing tackle position tells you everything you need to know about their priorities. They understand offensive line depth wins championships. Which brings up an interesting question. If the Vikings don't get Van Demark, should they draft a swing tackle in the upcoming NFL draft? I think the answer is absolutely yes. They brought in Justin Skol last year as a swing tackle, and it didn't work out. He wasn't good enough to be relied upon when the starters went down. The Vikings still need quality depth at the tackle position behind Darrisaw and O'Neill, and the draft is a great place to find that. Tackle is a sneaky position of need for Minnesota. It's not going to make headlines the way drafting a wide receiver or edge rusher would, but it's incredibly important for maintaining offensive line stability throughout a long season. If there's a tackle prospect available in the middle rounds who can come in and be a reliable backup, the Vikings should absolutely pull the trigger. But the Vikings aren't just thinking about the present. They're also looking toward the future, and that brings us to the contract extension conversation. Recent reports from Kevin Seifert indicate that the Vikings could be clearing up some cap space to extend both Brian O'Neill and Jordan Addison. This is massive news because it shows the Vikings are being proactive about locking up their own talent before it becomes a problem. Let's start with Brian O'Neill, because extending him feels like an absolute no-brainer. O'Neill currently has a cap hit of $14 million this season. By extending him, the Vikings could potentially save over $14 million on this year's cap while still keeping one of their best offensive linemen around for the long haul. That's smart cap management, and it gives the Vikings more flexibility to make other moves. But beyond just the cap savings, Brian O'Neill is still playing really good football. He was the 9th best run blocker at the tackle position this past season. Overall, he graded out at 81.6, which was 13th in the National Football League. The offensive line as a whole might have been a slight disappointment compared to preseason expectations, but a lot of that was due to injuries. When healthy, this offensive line can be elite, and O'Neill was one of the most consistent pieces of that unit. O'Neill has had a great career with the Vikings, and he's showing no signs of slowing down. Extending him for something like 3 years and $60 to $70 million feels like a fair price for both sides. O'Neill gets long-term security, and the Vikings keep one of their best offensive linemen locked in for the foreseeable future. It's a win-win situation. Now, Jordan Addison's potential extension is a bit more complicated, but it's equally important. Addison is one of the more underrated wide receivers in the entire league. In his rookie season back in 2023, he was absolutely phenomenal. He scored 10 touchdowns and had just under 1,000 receiving yards. That's elite production for a first-year player. He followed that up with another solid season in 2024, and even this past year when he missed 3 games and dealt with inconsistent quarterback play, he still managed 610 receiving yards. Addison also had that absolutely clutch jet sweep touchdown that knocked the Detroit Lions out of the playoffs. That's the kind of game-changing play that shows up when it matters most. The Vikings know what they have in Addison. He's a legitimate number 2 receiver who can take over games when Justin Jefferson is getting double-teamed. But here's where it gets tricky. Addison has had some off-field issues over the last couple of years that could impact his contract negotiations. He was suspended for the first quarter of a game against the Cleveland Browns for missing a walkthrough. He was also arrested in January at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino. These aren't career-ending issues, but they're red flags that teams have to consider when handing out long-term contracts. From the Vikings' perspective, if they view Addison as a long-term piece of this offense, they should try to get an extension done sooner rather than later. If they wait, and Addison goes out there and has a monster season with over 1,100 receiving yards, while Justin Jefferson is putting up 1,400, Addison's price is going to skyrocket. He could be looking at $28 to $30 million per year at that point. But if the Vikings can get him locked in now for something like 4 years and $100 million with $70 million guaranteed, that's $25 million per year. Given the off-field concerns and the desire to get a deal done early, that feels like a reasonable number for both sides. Addison gets paid like a top-tier number 2 receiver, and the Vikings get cost certainty before his price potentially goes up. The challenge for Minnesota is building a complete roster while paying big money to the wide receiver position. Justin Jefferson is already on the books for $35 million. If Addison gets $25 to $30 million, that's a massive chunk of the salary cap tied up in just 2 players. It makes it harder to build depth at other positions and keep the roster competitive across the board. But here's the thing. The Vikings let Jalen Nailor walk in free agency, which suggests they're planning to keep Addison long-term. They're comfortable rotating wide receiver 3s and relying on the elite production from their top 2 guys. And honestly, when you have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison as your top 2 receivers, you can get away with having less proven talent behind them. Those 2 are good enough to carry the passing game. The question Vikings fans have to ask themselves is this: is Jordan Addison worth $25 million per year? Does he deserve to be paid like one of the best number 2 receivers in the entire NFL? And are the off-field issues concerning enough to either lower the offer or walk away entirely? My take is that if you believe Addison is a long-term piece of this offense, you extend him now before his price goes up. The off-field stuff is concerning, but it's not disqualifying. Plenty of players have had rough patches early in their careers and turned things around. If the Vikings can get Addison locked in at a reasonable number now, it's better than waiting and potentially having to pay him even more down the line. What the Vikings are doing right now is building a roster for sustained success. They're not just making splashy free agent signings to win the next news cycle. They're thinking strategically about every position on the roster and making sure they have the right combination of talent, depth, and cap flexibility to compete for championships over the long haul. The Johnny Hekker signing gives them an all-pro caliber special teams unit that could be the best in the entire league. The Ryan Vandemark offer sheet shows they're serious about offensive line depth and protecting their franchise quarterback. And the potential extensions for Brian O'Neill and Jordan Addison demonstrate that they're committed to keeping their own talent and building continuity. This is how championship organizations operate. They don't panic, they don't make desperate moves, they identify needs, they target the right players, and they execute with precision. The Vikings are doing all of that right now, and it's incredibly exciting to watch. So where does this leave the Vikings heading into the 2026 season? They've got an elite special teams unit, they've got a solid offensive line with quality depth, they've got one of the best wide receiver duos in the entire NFL with Jefferson and Addison. They've got a defense that's loaded with talent and playmakers at every level. This roster is stacked, and they're not done building yet. The NFL draft is still coming up, and you can bet the Vikings are going to use those picks to add even more talent. Whether they go after a center to replace Blake Brandel, a swing tackle to add depth, or they target other positions of need, this front office has shown they know how to evaluate talent and make smart decisions. The rest of the NFC North better be paying attention because the Minnesota Vikings are coming. They're building something special, and these moves we're talking about today are just the beginning. This isn't a team that's hoping to sneak into the playoffs. This is a team that's building a roster capable of competing for Super Bowls, and that's exactly what Vikings fans deserve. After years of playoff disappointments and heartbreaking losses, this organization is finally putting all the pieces together. The culture is right, the coaching is elite, the talent is undeniable. Now it's just about putting it all together on the field and making it happen when the games actually matter. So, if you're excited about what the Vikings are building, if you're ready to see this team take the next step and compete for championships, then show some love right now. Drop those skulls in the comments to welcome Johnny Hecker to Minnesota. Let me know if you think the Bills are going to match the offer sheet for Ryan Vandermark, or if he's going to end up in purple. Tell me if you'd offer Jordan Addison that 4-year, $100 million extension, or if you think the Vikings should wait and see how he performs this season. And don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on those notifications so you never miss a single update about your Minnesota Vikings. We've got so much more content coming your way, and you're not going to want to miss any of it. This offseason is just getting started, and the Vikings are making moves that could change everything. Let's ride this wave together and watch this team become the powerhouse we all know they can be. Skol,
Hey everyone,
Vikings.
I'm working to hit 2,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.